All right, guys. Our next guest is having a tremendous year with Sid Kickboxing going strong with fighters such as Israel Adesanya, Alex Volkanovski, Brad Riddell, Dan Hooker, Shane Young, Kai Kara France, and now Carlos Ulberg adding his name to the UFC roster after a successful win on Dana White's Contender Series. And the man behind them all, Eugene Bareman. Welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you, man? Thanks for joining us.
One of the men behind them all. Yep. Thanks for the intro, guys. Good to be back. It's been a little while.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's a real honor to have you on the show, Eugene. We know how busy you are. So many great fighters over there at City Kickboxing. Despite this great success that the boys had in Vegas, Carlos, Brad, and Israel are currently stranded in the States. Their return to New Zealand has been heavily delayed. For those who don't know, what exactly happened? And does this have any effect on the preparations that are going on at the gym?
So what exactly happened is they fell into a funny place where they booked the flight to the States, or the UFC booked the flight to the States and back again outside of the time when this new voucher system came in. With this new voucher system, you need a voucher on the same that allows you to come into the country on the same day as your flight. So the UFC wasn't aware of this system. We weren't aware of the system. The system came in while we were actually in Fight Island, and we just got caught out a little bit, to be honest. And unfortunately, there were no vouchers available to come into the country until the 11th of December. So, and in terms of the preparation, it's still. They're going to be back with still plenty of time for us to prepare for any upcoming fights. If anything, at the moment with they're at one of the best jiu-jitsu clubs in the world, training their ass off, which is probably something they wouldn't be doing if they were back home. They'd probably be a little bit more on holiday mode, so to speak. So if anything, it's probably helping us a little bit.
Okay, that's good. And I know you're wearing the Team Far t-shirt because Israel was supposed to be helping Junior Far prepare for his fight, but then that got delayed. It was supposed to be next month. Now it's going to be happening, I think, early next year. So didn't really screw up those plans either, right?
Well, yeah. Obviously, that wasn't our intention, but we suffered an injury, and it's kind of all going to work out. I do think I'm not sure of the Junior Far date, but I possibly think there might be a clash of dates, but it is what it is. We just want to get the fights, we want to get these fights up and going again.
When you say clash of dates, what do you mean between Junior and then between Israel's fight with Jan?
Between Junior and said UFC fight with certain UFC fighters.
Well, what do you mean said UFC fight? I feel like everybody expects that fight to be next. Could it not be next potentially? When could it even happen?
I got a few of them, right? So it could be any one of them.
Which few? Which ones?
It's a guessing game that we're going to play.
Yes.
Look. There's obviously a pay-per-view in March. We want the Jan fight as early as we can. He keeps harping on about March, so we just, at the moment, we don't know which way that's going to swing. So it's still all in the works.
When you say early, how early is early for you guys? When do you guys want the fight to happen?
Like February. Earliest date in February, or any time in February. Given that Israel's won't be back till the end of December, because he gets into the country on the 11th of December, but then he's got to do a 2-week quarantine in a hotel. So you can add another 2 weeks to that. You're basically getting out on Christmas Day. So given that he'll already be super fit because he's doing a lot of training over there. Yeah, February.
It's interesting because Jan talking about that, hey, if you guys aren't ready for March, maybe Glover Teixeira is going to be the next guy that gets the crack of this belt. And I'm curious, is this Jan thing 100% for you guys, or if this timing doesn't quite work out, could it be potentially open to maybe even going back down middleweight and fighting a guy like Robert Whittaker in the interim? if it doesn't work out timeline-wise? Or is the goal set on Jan? Is he absolutely the next guy you guys really want?
No, the crosshairs are on Jan. Robert Whittaker may as well be outside of the scope. He's not even anywhere near the crosshairs. So, we're not even mentioning that name. All our focus is on the Blachowicz fight. At the moment, the battle that's going on is not between the two fighters. It's between the management teams of both fighters and the UFC. But that's the battle going on now. So we just knock off these battles as they come, and then slowly we'll get there. But I mean, Jan wants March, so he's posturing for that March. So of course, when you come out and say things like that publicly on public record on social media and stuff, it's all part of the strategy to put you in a position to take the fight at a certain date that you want it. But ultimately, there's two champions involved, and so they both have just as equal right to what day that they want to fight. It has to work for both of them, and ultimately, both these guys work for a company, and then that company decides when you fight. So there's a lot of different factors that decide when this fight happens.
Absolutely. Let's just quickly talk about the fight for a second. I mean, Jan now the champion in the division, but apart from the fact that he's got the title, what is it about this fight that kind of excites you guys so much about this next matchup? Is there anything specifically about Jan where you're excited to see how you guys can go in there and sort of take on some of those aspects in the octagon?
Yeah, I mean, what excites me is just the challenge of a great fighter like Jan, the challenge of going up a weight division, just the whole challenge of trying to take on a task like that, another monumental task that I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people that are going to stack the chips against us, but it's like very motivating when you get a challenge like this. It's very easy to pick myself up and pick my fighter up and pick my team up because of the enormity and the challenge. Like Jan's a absolute monster. But this is what we do. Like, we slay monsters. That's what that's what we do for a living. So yeah, that's what excites me. For Israel, it's very much the same. There's probably some extra motivation there to go up to light heavyweight, to set up, some future fights for him. But for me, it's purely about that.
When did this fight sort of first pop up on your radar?
The day after we finished the last fight.
So straight away, you guys already had your sights on Jan.
Me, Ash, and Tim Simpson met McMaynard down in the restaurant. We said we want to chat with you about something. We let him know, what we want to do, and then he was very receptive to it, and then it just pushed its way through to where it is now from there.
It's interesting because when it comes to Jan Jones, he wasn't really willing to fight him. He had some close fights, obviously, with Thiago Santos, Dominic Reyes. And with Jan, I guess he didn't really have much interest in fighting a guy like him. A lot of people, though, wonder if Jan would have been the guy to actually give Jon Jones that first loss. You guys have been sort of looking at his skills and what he brings to the table. Do you believe that Jan could have been that guy to beat Jon Jones?
I believe he would have had a very good chance, based on Jon's recent performances. But Jon's a difficult task for anybody. That's a very difficult thing for me to sit here and say. But I definitely believe he had a chance based on his recent performances against Thiago, and then the other light heavyweight he just beat. Forgot his name.
Dominic Reyes.
Dominic Reyes. He definitely would have had a chance, but it's hard. It's so hard to say that and go against someone who's so good.
Yeah, he's had an incredible run, and he's had a little bit of a thing where like guys like Luke Rockhold and some of his other opponents have almost kind of like overlooked him a little bit. You know, I thought it would be an easier fight than it really was. Thought it would be a little bit different in there than what it really was. And I remember he was on the show not long after he won the title, and he was telling us that, hey, people think it's a certain kind of way when they look at this matchup. When they go in the octagon with me, it feels a lot different to what they imagine it would be. What do you believe he's a guy that's been a little bit overlooked by his opponents? And do you see those kind of factors that he's talking about that people haven't really been able to pick up on when they go into these matchups with him?
Yeah, 100%. You know, he's a guy that what he is the type of guy that when you're watching him fight from a distance, either from 50 meters away or 100 meters away in a stadium or through a television screen, he doesn't give you a true indication of how good he is. In fact, it probably paints a really unrealistic picture of how good he is. I believe when you get in there with him is when you understand just how explosive he is and how also a little bit awkward he is, because that's a key reason why he's able to give a lot of these people, a lot of these guys, a lot of trouble. And you don't truly understand that till you get in there. And I think it's easy. It's very easy to watch him and underestimate him. But obviously, my team may be new, so to speak, in the UFC, like the last 4 or 5 years or whatever, but we've been around. My team's one of the most experienced coaching teams in the sport, in combat sport, in the world. Before we went to the UFC, you're talking about 20 years of coaching and cornering fighters before we got into the UFC. We're not going to fall. We're not going to fall for something as amateurish as underestimating someone based on their performance. From watching their performances on the TV screen, it's something that it's just not within us to do that.
It's amazing to see how long you guys have been around and to only sort of now be finally getting the credit that you guys deserve. So it is very well deserved. I am wondering, how does Jan compare to, say, Israel's past challenges at middleweight? Is it in a way as simple as, well, he's a bigger guy in a bigger division, therefore he's a bigger challenge? Do you guys see it that way, or do you see it differently?
Let me paint a picture for you, which is a very interesting picture, which is like, I don't have to hide this because this is public information, but at one stage, a lot of people's opinion in the kickboxing world had Israel and a guy called Artem Levin as the top 2 pound-for-pound fighters in the world for a long time. These two guys were phenomenal strikers, and Israel was, he was one of the best strikers at middleweight, at any weight in kickboxing. If you look at his record, you can count on one hand the number of times he lost. There's one commonality amongst a lot of those opponents that he had, and they all had a size advantage. You're talking about Philippe Verlinden, Alex Pereira. You're talking about a boxer called Daniel Aman. There's one common thing against all these opponents that managed to get a win over Israel, as they were all bigger than him. And that's the challenge. Like, that's the challenge we're facing. It's more than just being bigger. It's a lifetime of fighting people who you have a height and reach advantage over, and then all of a sudden you don't have those same advantages. It's overcoming that. That's going to be the key to this fight. That's going to be the challenge. That's what makes it interesting for Israel, interesting for me and my coaching team, is we're jumping into a place where we haven't been particularly successful, and we're looking to turn that around, and we're looking to prove, not to anybody else, we're looking to prove to ourselves that we can overcome a challenge like this.
And also the other aspect of it is, of course, he's the champion in middleweight. So a lot of guys will move up, stay up, whereas he's got plans to go up, down, all around. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was when Israel was on the show last, he was talking about, this thought in his mind that when he does match up with Jon Jones, it could be at heavyweight. I know we had Coach Winkle, Jon's coach, on the other week. He was talking about that they have no plans in going down to 205. I'm curious, Huge, do you think Israel becoming the light heavyweight champion would sort of lure Jon back to the 205 division? Or do you really believe that this fight would have to take place at heavyweight if that's what has to happen at that point?
Look, Israel. Look, that the two fighters you're talking about, they have very different mindsets. Like, that's like the first thing that's obvious. Jon Jones hasn't moved up. He hasn't done anything about. He hasn't talked about moving up. He hasn't wanted to move up for a decade. Like, Israel approaches the sport very differently to Jon Jones. Israel is a real advocate for like supreme martial arts, being extremely good to the point where size and weight doesn't matter. He believes in that. He believes in that concept. He believes in that theory. He believes that at the end of the day, when all the chips fall, it'll be skills that will win over size and strength. Something Jon Jones obviously has, he doesn't have that inside himself, which is why he's waited so long to move up. But Israel's a different case. He wants to go and test out his skills against a much bigger human being because he believes in them. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, it was great, because one of the things I was thinking about is, do you believe that Jon Jones and his team think that, hey, fighting Israel at heavyweight maybe stacks the chips more on our side than if we fought him at light heavyweight?
Well, maybe it does, but yeah, but that's the difference between the two athletes. There's a lot of differences, but Israel, at the end of the day, believes in himself and his skills more than Jon does. That's why Israel's willing to do this after only being in the UFC for a couple of years, because he just believes in himself. He believes in his skills, so he's willing to take risks that Jon just simply was never willing to take.
Do you feel like that's also one of the reasons why there's a difference in the way they manage moving up in weight? Like, Jon Jones recently hit 240 pounds. He's trying to pack on the weight, the size, the strength to go up to heavyweight. Whereas I feel like with Israel, every time you talk to him, he shoots down the notion of gaining weight, gaining size to move up a division. Is that kind of partly one of the reasons why Israel is reluctant to gain any size? Because I guess for him it's the speed advantage, but also he wants to just be the better man, not the bigger man.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's a careful balance, and these guys, look, Jon Jones and Israel, they make a lot of money. They can afford to get some of the best people working with them and advise them and take them in the right direction that they need to go to put on weight. But at the end of the day, it comes back to exactly what I keep harping on about. Israel is supremely confident in his skills. The reason he goes out there and says it doesn't matter where Jon Jones sits, where he puts his weight, it's not going to matter. And Israel believes that he can beat Jon Jones, and so and weight is like a very small factor in that decision. So that's where it all comes from. He's just supremely confident that his skills, regardless of what weight Jon Jones is, will be triumphant at the end of the day.
Yeah, I can't understate just how excited I am for that fight, and I truly believe it may be one of, if not the biggest fights of 2021, assuming it happens. But speaking of big fights, big magnitude, you don't need to fight with your old rusty razor and or shaver anymore, because Manscaped are giving you the best personal grooming device in the world, the Lawnmower 3.0. You can shave anywhere, 7,000 RPM. It's got an LED light. It will not cut you, and it is waterproof, and it lasts for up to 90 minutes. You can groom any part of your body and make your balls silky smooth. And they're giving away an awesome discount code. If you use the code submission, you get 20% off. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. Listen, don't move up in weight because of your dick stash. Get rid of it. Get on top of it. Use the Manscaped trimmer. And also, just quickly, whack off in style with the weed whacker as well. And before you say anything, that is a nose trimmer. Do the job properly. Be a hairless, wonderful man over the summer here in Australia, and use our code submission at manscaped.com. Get 20% off and free shipping now.
That's right. Just like moving up in weight, you got to be streamlined, and nothing's more streamlined than being hairless. Also, speaking of streamline, if you ever want to download stuff or watch stuff on streaming devices or streaming networks like Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus, and maybe your favorite show isn't on in your region of the world, and you wish, man, if only I lived in another part of the world so I could watch, my favorite show, you can now with a VPN. You simply change your location, and that way you browse the internet safely. And PureVPN, our good friends, are giving away some excellent deals. You can go the 5-year special, which is just $1.48 a month, which is 86% off, which is a massive saving. And if you use the code submission, you get an extra 10% off. You can also go a 1-year deal for $4.16 a month, which is 62% off, or you can just go monthly at $10.95. Either way, use the code submission and get 10% off the final price with PureVPN.
Listen, you don't have to be Gene Hackman sitting in a cage, an enemy of the state, trying to access Netflix in America. Jump onto our deal right now, purevpn.com/submission, and get that extra 10% off, which gives you a crazy amount of savings depending on what plan you go with. That's purevpn.com/submission. But Huge, I'm just wondering, from your perspective, if you had to look at the weight class that holds Israel's future, I mean, we're looking at this massive fight with Jan, which is going to be so exciting for everybody to watch, and a huge milestone for Australasian MMA. And then after that, I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer to do this fight with Jon Jones. So would you say it'll be a little bit of time before he goes back to middleweight? I mean, you mentioned it before, Robert Whittaker's not even in the discussion. Does Israel's future kind of sit at that light heavyweight, possibly even heavyweight zone into 2021?
As you can see, I haven't thought much about this exact question. I'm thinking about this.
But this is coming from a man that does plans for his fighters for years ahead of time. This is taking us by surprise.
Look, I tell you what, like the Jan Blachowicz fight wasn't in the plans for the near future. So that was a bit of a curveball thrown to me by Israel and other members of our team. So that's what I mean. As much meticulous planning as I do, you also have to be ready at the drop of a dime to adapt. That's a damn good question. To which I don't honestly have an answer. I don't honestly have an answer, because if Israel is true to his word, and I'm sure he will be, and he doesn't try to pack on the pounds like Jon Jones is doing to move to heavyweight, then it's very possible that he can quite easily slide between two divisions. That is quite possible. And then which division do I think he's more likely to kind of draw a line in the sand in or put his foot down in. I'm not sure. That's going to be up to him and what interests him. At the moment, Israel's in a funny place where he's not in a funny place. He's in a place that he earned, where he gets to decide what's going on. Like, this when you reach a certain level, you bring in a certain, you bring something to the table. You get to decide what's going on. Israel's in that position, so I'm really not sure which way he's going to swing. At the end of the day, it's going to be what interests him the most. Like, it's going to be what motivates him and interests him the most. And I'm not sure. I haven't discussed with him whether that's middleweight or light heavyweight, to be honest.
And it's fascinating because, when people talk about legacy, they talk about fighters as like, he was the greatest, middleweight of all time or lightweight or whatever. And then if Israel stays at light heavyweight, it'll be interesting to see how his legacy pans out. Imagine being potentially the greatest light heavyweight of all time as opposed to the best middleweight. So it all gets very interesting. But you mentioned it that, he is going to do whatever interests him the most. And, this Jon Jones fight has sort of been looming over Israel and CKB as the fight to make. Could this be the next fight after Jan potentially if everything sort of aligns? Not to look past Jan.
Yeah, definitely not to look past Jan. To quickly just answer this question, I believe this. If the stars align, given that I think Jon Jones is going to have a fight and Israel is going to have a fight, then we could see that fight as the next fight. And then there's a whole lot of other questions that are obviously going to come into play, like which weight division it'll be at, all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. But the only person that's ever shown a penchant for moving around weight divisions has been Israel, right? And then, of course, Jon Jones, being who he is followed in Israel's footsteps, which is funny because he's meant to be the guy that's already established himself there. But Israel's got that guy dancing to the beat of whatever Israel rhythm he puts out.
And we have to talk about you, though, Coach, because Eugene Bareman has had one crazy year for 2020, flying all over the world, quarantine to quarantine, and with some of the biggest world-class fighters in the world training in your gym. Obviously historic for Australasian MMA, combat sports, boxing. We even had Jon Jones's coach, Mike Winklejohn, on just a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how impressed he is with what you guys have done with your fighters and how great the coaching squad is at CKB. Break it down for us, man. You just have one huge fight after another huge fight. And not only that, you're balancing these fights all over the world. You're spreading out coaches, figuring out who goes where. So many stars in one gym, so many massive things on the line. How have you been able to cope with 2020? And how are you feeling right now as we're nearing the end of it? We imagine it. Is this one of the craziest years in your coaching history, would you say? Or
one of the craziest years of my life, not just my coaching history.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that, this crazy year, that theme can be resonated amongst so many people this year with COVID and stuff. But it's been a crazy year, but I've enjoyed, at the moment I have a bit of time off, and I've really just enjoyed not having a fight on the immediate horizon. One thing I've been doing is going and paying a lot of attention to like the local scene and some of the local fights. And I've really got some true inspiration from attending those fights. People don't understand like that environment, that UFC environment, whether you're boxing, you're in the top promotions in the boxing or kickboxing, like that environment is cutthroat. It's ruthless. You're living on the edge the whole time. You constantly you can cut the ear with a knife constantly. There's no accord given. Like there's no friends. There's a friendliness amongst the coaches and the teams, but it's not real. It's not real because in 2 months' time that team you're being friendly with could be your number one enemy in a couple of months' time. So like. It's a ruthless environment. When you start involving the economics that is involved with the UFC and the money, and it's absolutely cutthroat. And it's good to it's good to get away from that sometimes and come back to martial arts, the local martial arts, where there's still a code. Okay, because in professionalism, that code gets lost. And it's good to come back to the local scene where there's still a code amongst trainers, a code amongst fighters, and it hasn't been lost in all the razzmatazz and the money and all the rest of it. And that's what I'm enjoying at the moment. And eventually I'll be here too long and I'll miss the pressure cooker, and I'll have to go back to the pressure cooker. But for now, I'm feeling fantastic right here in little old New Zealand.
You say little old New Zealand, but I mean, one of the reasons why we love having you on the program is everybody says Eugene Bareman, one of the most interesting guys in combat sports. Eugene Bareman, we love to hear his thoughts and everything. He's such an honest guy. And even though you don't have any social media, I feel like you've become a bit of a celebrity over there. I know you rarely leave the gym. I'm curious, how do you navigate that? I mean, you go to the local fights. We imagine it's quite different to the experience you had before you guys took over the UFC. What's it like to you when you have all these young fighters coming up to you, all these people trying to buy you drinks, all these people trying to get to know you more, all these people trying to, I suppose, also attach their wagon to what you're doing, trying to get in the gym now? It must be a pretty surreal experience whenever you go to these events or even walk the streets of New Zealand sometimes. Was that some of the fans there?
I've got a fan here.
Hey.
Oh, the man himself. Look at that. Wow.
This is Junior Farr here.
Yeah.
He's a big MMA fan, and he watches your guys' show. He watches all the media to do with MMA media. So he's seen me and Israel on your guys' show. So
what an honor. What an honor from a cameo from the man himself.
We'll have to have the man on for a proper interview, but something tells me he's got a bright future in boxing. I don't know what it is. Could be that beautiful mustache.
I've tried to get him into MMA. I've tried to sway him, but I'll be honest, he's absolutely terrible.
Good luck against Joseph Parker, Jr.
Thank you. Yeah, there he is.
So you've dodged the question.
Celebrity life, fast cars, and ever faster women, Eugene. How do you handle it?
Look, I'm very any recognition I get in public and stuff, which to be honest, I'm not a big person. I don't go out in public and stuff much. But anything I get, I accept graciously. Like, I'm very humbled if people recognize the hard work that the guys are doing, the hard work that me and my team are going. I'm very gracious. I definitely go out of my way to thank them for their support and give them a photo. And I'm very happy that the sport is in a place where that happens now, because I come from another place where the sport was in the doldrums, and to see where it is now makes me happy. So it doesn't really affected me personally. For me, it's just a appreciative photo with a fan or someone buying me an orange juice or something. I like it. I enjoy it. I like it.
Well, there you go. It is amazing to see what you've done over there in, as you say, little old New Zealand. And orange juice on us the next time we see you in person, Huge. I'd love to end it on that note, but just quickly before we let you go, I want to ask you, Dan Hooker's another guy that, everybody wants to see back in action. And I'm curious what you think should be next for Dan. The division's kind of tied up. You got Tony and Charles Oliveira tied up. Obviously, Conor is fighting Dustin. Who would you like to see for Dan, and what sort of time frame could we possibly be looking at?
Conor McGregor wants to do a season. Like, if you want to do a season, you can't just talk about it. Like, your management team have to get in and actually demand that season gets done. When you want to do a season, when you want to fight regularly like my guys do in New Zealand, you have to line everything up, okay? You need participants as well. That's the other half of the equation. Dan Hooker will fight anybody, anytime, on the drop of a dime. We've proven that. Let's be a part of Conor McGregor's season. Tim Simpson, make it happen wherever you are. I'm not sure where you are right now in the world. We would like to fight Conor McGregor. Maybe not next because he has Poirier, but we are a willing participant. If you're going to talk about your season, then we will step in and be a part of your season. Graciously, we're happy to do that with respect.
I know Michael Chandler wants to be on that Conor McGregor card. Is there any chance you guys would be ready for that card, or is it a little bit too soon? I think it's January 23rd.
That's probably a bit early for us. But
it takes at least a month to get there from New Zealand, so you're at a deficit already.
Hey, but you never know with Dan. Dan does crazy things. Dan. That's what Dan's known for. So if Dan decides that he wants to fight on January 23rd, it wouldn't surprise me that he twists my arm and we end up fighting someone on that date. Chandler, I'm not sure. He doesn't have a fight, obviously.
He doesn't. Nothing official yet.
Yeah. Give him someone. I want to see if he's any good. It's easy to be good in the B leagues. You know what I'm saying? Give him an A leaguer. Give him someone top tier. Let's see. Let's get him out of the B leagues. Put him in the A leagues. Let's see where he's actually at skill wise, and let's see. Let's let the world know if he's good enough to hang with in the A leagues.
Well, I'll tell you what, with crowds attending sporting events in Australasia, imagine a big Dan Hooker Conor McGregor fight in the 2021 season. And by the way, that fight would be tremendous as well. So there's no losing in putting that fight together. But guys, there he is. If this isn't the gym of the year, you've got to be the coach of the year. It's always an honor to speak to Eugene Bareman. He finds time out of his busy schedule. I think you see us more than your family, Eugene. So we appreciate the time. Of course, follow them at City Kickboxing. And if you see Eugene Bareman out, make sure to buy him an orange juice. He'll be really nice to you and he'll appreciate it. Thank you so much, Eugene. We appreciate you as always, my friend.
Thank you very much, guys. Pleasure.